Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Professor Lin Guoqing. Please be seated on stage. He is our former Deputy Minister from the Council of Agriculture, and now welcoming our presenter. Please be seated on stage, Professor Liu Xiaolan. Please. Thank you, Professor Liu. Please join us on stage. Welcoming our presenter, Professor Wang Junhao. Professor Wang, please join us on stage. Thank you so much. And also, to be joining us on stage, we will have Professor James Riddell from the United States. Please join us. Thank you, sir. And Dr. Rainer Adam from Germany. Please join us. Thank you, sir. Guten Morgen. I do this at other forums, so if you don't mind, can we have a photo of your panel before we start? Please. One photo of our panel. Yes. Okay. Please, our photographer. Thank you. Our applause to panel one. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please be seated. So, ladies and gentlemen, for paper one, please join me in welcoming our presenter, Professor Liu Xiaolan, on the agricultural land conversion. Please.
Good morning, everyone. And I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to introduce the agricultural land conversion in Taiwan for the past 50 years. So everybody knows that one. This is the content of my presentation. And I think diversity of the land use is very commonly observed. So land use competition is very commonly. According to the Tuners and Alonso's theory, that if which one can pay the highest rent, they can get the land use in that location. So this is a basic competition, land use competition theory. In Taiwan, after the land reform, our economic development shifted from the agricultural development to the industrialization. So from the 1952 in Taiwan, our land competition was beginning in that stage. So we want to, now we have an overview of policy of agricultural land conversion. So from the 1952, we can separate our stage for the three stages. First stage, we have the agricultural sector have the economic advantage to compete the land. So at that stage, our policy is to help the industrial sector to acquire more land. This is so that means from the 1970s, our policy is help the industrial sector to get more land. But after the 1970s, the agricultural sector, the economic advantage was disappeared. So from the 1970s to the 1990s, our policy is switched from the to protect the agricultural land. So from the 1970s to the 1990s, because agriculture, the economic advantage disappeared. So our policy is to protect our agriculture land. So after the 1990s, because we will enter, the first things we will enter the WTO, and the second things, because the agriculture is still decreasing. So at that moment, we had a lot of people say that we should deregulation of our agricultural land. So we have our policy is switched to the release the agricultural land to the industrial sector and the urban area. So this is our policy. Before the 1970s, our land is to help to get the industrial sector can get more the land. And this one, I will explain the content about these policies later. So after that one, from the 1952 to the year 2016, we lost almost 82,000 hectares of the agricultural land. But this one, we can see that one, the agricultural land is still decreasing. But during these things, we can see that one. the paddy field is decreasing, but the upland is increasing. That means we lost not only the agriculture, the number of the agriculture, but also the quality of the agriculture is decreasing too. If we compare with the policy and the number of the agricultural land, I say that one. Sorry. This one we can see that one before the 1970s, our policy is to help the industry to get the more land. But we can see that one, the agricultural land is still increasing. This one because at that moment, the agricultural sector still have the economic advantage. So even our policy to help the industry sector to get more land, but our agricultural land is still increasing. After 1970s, agriculture lost the economic advantage. So our policy to protect, but even we have to protect, the highest point is in the 1977. After 1977, our agricultural land is decreasing. So this reason we can even our policy to protect agriculture, but we lost the economic advantage. So the market power is over the planning power. And during the 1990s, our policy is to release our agriculture to the other sectors. So the agricultural land is decreasing very sharply. For example, I can give you the number. For example, from the 1977 to the 1995, we lost agriculture every year, about 1,000 hectares every year. But after 1995, we have released our agriculture to the other sector. We lost almost 7,200 hectares per year. So you can see that one. After 1995, our agricultural land decreased a lot. After that one, we still have another problem. Even we have protected this kind of agriculture there, but we still have a lot of non-agricultural land use on our agricultural land right now. Especially, we can say that one, the housing and the factory is mostly the big issue in our country right now. So I want to introduce these two for everyone. The first one, I want to show you the farmhouse. The farmhouse is come from the amendment of Agricultural Development Act in 2000. In the year 2000, for this amendment, two things is significant. Because before the 2000 year, our agricultural land should be used by the agriculture and owned by the farmers. But after that one, after year 2000, the agriculture owned by the farmers does not exist. That means it can be owned by the non-farmers. And the second thing is because at that moment, after 1990s, the land price is very high. It is not easy to get housing. So in after year 2000s, the agricultural sector to help the farmer can have the housing on their own farm agricultural land. So that means we call that is the farmhouse. So in the beginning, we want to help the farmer to get their own housing. But we can see that. So we have this kind of statutes of building farmhouse in the year 2001. But according to the statistics right now, we have 66% of our agricultural land, the farmhouse is on the agricultural land. It's less than the 0.225 hectares. That means this policy make our agricultural land becomes very small pieces. This one is the first thing. And the second thing, another interesting thing is, you can see that one. The farmhouse is mostly is located in the primary agricultural zone. 70% of this farmhouse is located in primary agricultural zone. And everybody knows that one. The primary agricultural zone is high quality of our agricultural land. So you can see that one. Everybody on our high quality agricultural land have the farmhouse on that one. Everybody can see. What is farmhouse right now in Taiwan? I can show you this picture. Okay, this is the farmhouse in Taiwan right now. This is one thing. And another thing I want to show you, you can see what kind of seriously about our agricultural development. This is an aerial photograph in the Yilan. It's close to the Taipei metropolitan. This is all is agricultural land. And you can see that the red one is the farmhouse. So you can think about that way. In the beginning, we want to help the farmer to have their own housing. But finally, you can see the farmhouse is located everywhere in our agricultural land. And another interesting thing, you can see that one. Most of the farmhouse is surrounding our metropolitan area. You can see that one, the Yilan and the Nantou, that is in the metropolitan area. And the south of the Taiwan is our major agricultural production county. But you can see that one, it do not have a lot of farmhouse. So we found these kind of problems. And we can see that one, the same time, only 82 and about 39% of this farmhouse owned by the farmers. Okay, so what they did, it is for the restaurant and for the resort. Okay, so this is land use about the use of the farmhouse. And so our government found this kind of problem. So in the year 2013, we have some revised, some new regulation about this farmhouse. So after this one, you can see that one. In the before, it is increasing. Maybe I can show you, because the last one is the year 2014. That is on the March. But you still can see, after we have this new regulation, the number of the farmhouse is decreasing. Another thing is, because for the environment, if you can see that the photo, this farmhouse is located everywhere. So our government wants to have this kind of, we so-called cluster farmhouse. Cluster farmhouse, that means we have the 20 farmers, they can get together. They can build the housing together and cultivate in the other place. Then, very interesting in this one, because the 20 farmers, at least 20 farmers get together to build housing. And they can have their farmers to cultivate in other place. You can see that one. Over 90%, that means in primary zone and the agriculture and the urban agriculture zone is almost the housing is located in that area. But how about the agriculture then for their cultivate? Where is this? Almost 60%. You can see that one. Sorry. Almost 60% in the slope land and the preservation zone. So that means a good location is for the housing. And the marginal, the secondary farmer, the agricultural land is for the cultivate. So another thing I want to discuss is about the factory, especially for the, we said illegal, because agricultural land shouldn't have this kind of factory. So we said it is illegal factories. And so according to the survey last year, we have over 136 illegal factory on the 13,000 hectares of agricultural land. This is a picture. This is our agricultural land, and you can see how many illegal factory on that one. This is in Zhanghua. Why we have this kind of illegal factory, so many illegal factory in Taiwan right now? This is, we have the history background. The first reason, I think it is for the labor supply. I just mentioned in the 1950s, our economic development shifted to the industrialization. And at that moment, the industrialization is labor intensive. All the industry is labor intensive. This kind of labor intensive, it comes from the agricultural sector. So the firms wanted to get the labor force, so they will close to the agricultural village. So that will be on the agricultural land. Then, if we say that one, during the 1960s to the 1970s, our policy is to help the industrial sector to get more land. But if their agricultural land converted into the industrial district, they should pay the tax. Because in our country, our tax policy, the agricultural land doesn't need to pay the tax. If converted to the other land use, you should pay the tax. So everybody thinks, I don't want to pay the tax. So that means a lot of the illegal factory on the agricultural land. The third one, I think, is the location. This location is the industrial district location. During the 1960s, because after 1960, our government established a lot of the industrial zone. But this industrial zone, this kind of industrial zone is not good location. It's far away from the agricultural village. Or if do not have very good transportation network. Therefore, the firms doesn't want to locate it in that industrial district. If the location is very good, there are two things. One thing is it is full. The other thing is the land price is much higher than the agriculture price. So that's the reason why, if I can locate it in a cheaper place, why I should move to the higher land price place? So this is so the first is the land price, and the fifth reason is agglomeration economies. If one firm located there, then others will want to locate it that too. The last one, I think, is the physical effect. Because this is an illegal factory located in the rural area, they can create a lot of job opportunity. So the local government doesn't want to keep this factory away. So even our policy and we have our regulation cannot do that one. So the government doesn't want to give them taxes to punish them. Okay, finally, I can say for the competition is for have the market lead and the planning lead. For the market lead, we hope we can including this kind of ecological value. And the second thing is for the planning lead, the government should execute the policy strictly. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Professor Liu. That was the paper 1 on agricultural land conversion. Moving on to paper 2, land policy development and agricultural transition. Please join me in welcoming Professor Wang Junhao. Professor Wang. Morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Junhao Wang from National Taiwan University. Today is my great honor to have this opportunity to present the article entitled Land Policy Development and Agricultural Transition. I divide my presentation into 4 parts. The first one is overview agricultural development in Taiwan. The second one, I will introduce the land reform programs and their socio-economic consequences. We have, according to the official documents, we have 3 stages of land reform since 1949. The third part, I would like to discuss the paradigm shift in agricultural policy, especially from productivism to multifunctionality. I will select 2 policy cases to introduce the multifunctional agriculture. The final part is conclusion and policy implication. Okay, here is some basic information about Taiwan agricultural sector. Taiwan agriculture is characterized by small-scale family farms. The average farm size is about only 1 hectare. And for the farmers, there are 555 farmers nowadays. The share is about 5% only. And the average age is quite old. It's about 62 years old. Also, such a small-scale farming system in Taiwan faces a challenge of structural problems and trade liberalization, also climate change. Another problem is the food sufficient ratio is quite low. It's about only 31%. Okay, here's more details information about the basic features of agricultural development. As we can see, the cultivated land area and the agricultural population, also the farmers of total employment and the agricultural contribution to GDP declined dramatically over the past half centuries. However, the average farm size stayed quite stably, only 1 hectare. So we begin with the first stage of land reform policy. The objective is redistribution of poverty rate and focus more on social equality and stabilities. Several measures also introduced, for example, the rent reduction on sales of public land to tenants and the land to the tillers. There are also several positive contributions. For example, agricultural productivities and farm household income increased. And this is also helped to boost the overall economic growth after war times. And the other consequence is that the self-employed farmers increased to 80% after the first stage land reforms. That also result in shaping a smallholder farming system until nowadays. Here's some official old photos and the documents about the first stage land reforms. So in 1982, the government announced the second stage reforms. The objective is in enlargement of farm size and try to remove the disadvantages of small-scale farming left by first stage land reform. Also, several measures, for example, agricultural land consolidation, encourage different kinds of cooperative farming systems. Also, the government provides long-term preferential loans for farmers to purchase farmland. And the results shows that the participants in the second stage land reform, their farm size increased slightly from about 0.9 to 1.3 hectares. However, another achievement is that the farm mechanization is reached a high point, about 97%. Until the stage 3, the land reform starts in 2009. The objective is similar but not quite the same. We try to improve the agricultural structure, both for the age structure and the farm size structures. We try to foster intergenerational transfer of farm populations. For example, to encourage old age farmers out and recruiting young farmers in the agricultural sector. And this is a quite famous program in Taiwan now called Small Lowland and Big Tenants. The government provides subsidies for the land rent, both for the old age landlords and young tenants. However, the farmland must be leased for a minimum period of 3 years. The resource is quite successful. In total, there are about 14,000 hectares of farmland leased last year. And the average age of the young big tenants is about 42 years. They operate averagely 8.7 hectares. So this is another propaganda for the official propaganda for the SLBT programs. We can see the young farmers with big farm machines on website or Facebooks. We also use the microfilm try to attract the young people to join into the farming career. We also use the comparison between the problem of old farmers and the hope of young farmers on the magazines. So here's more details results of the SLBT programs. We can see that the number of small landowner and rented area in these programs increased obviously. So we now have more younger farmer and larger with larger farm size. So I try to summarize the three-stage land reform in Taiwan. The second and third stage, we try to remove the disadvantage of first stage land reforms. We try to enlarge the farm size. However, the second one is not so successful, but we are now satisfied with the third stage land reform process. On the next part, I would like to introduce a paradigm shift in agricultural policy. We can see the first and second stage of land reform. We focus more on how to increase farm productivities. However, in 1991, the government announced a new concept how agricultural development should be. This is 三生农业. In addition to the production, the agriculture development should pay more attention on especially village life or the rural ecology development. This, after becoming a member of WTO, we use the international term, that is multifunctional agriculture. So we focus more on the non-market value and public goods jointly produced by farming activities and the environment. We care more about environmental sustainability and biodiversity. Later, I will introduce two policy cases. So, however, under the multifunctionality or multifunctional agriculture, several interesting phenomena happened in Taiwan. Or, for example, the rural tourism, or farm accommodation and the restaurants and farmhouse, even in these 2 years, is the solar farms. All happens on the farms. If we use a bird view to see what happens in Taiwan's farmland, we can see the leisure facilities, accommodations, farmhouse, that all related to the farmland use under the new agricultural policy. So the leisure agriculture program is a special one. That is just like rural tourism or farm tourism. We try to use the countryside combined with agricultural landscape, farming activity, or rural village life, and try to create some new incomes for farmers. So under such program, land use has been changed. For example, construction of specific tourism or recreational facilities, such as accommodation, catering, processing site, or farm shop. That is regarded as legal agricultural use in Taiwan now. So we can see this leisure farms is everywhere in Taiwan. This is a spatial distribution. The problem is farmland under the leisure agriculture policy is not anymore a food or the agricultural production base. It is more likely to be recreational resources for urban tourists. However, leisure agriculture and farm tourism has indeed improved the rural economy and landscape significantly, as well as to create lots of local business and specialities. Another policy case is health for agriculture, which introduced in 2007. They put more attention on environmental friendly farming systems, also the food safety. There are three certification or labeling systems. For example, the organic farming system, it is not allowed any chemical inputs used on the farmland. And the other three is traceable agricultural products and the and GAP, good agricultural practice, leads to certification systems follow conventional farming methods, but under special consideration of environmental quality and food safety. Our government also introduced another program, is school lunch program. We try to provide safe food and agricultural products for the school children. That also help to create new selling channel for such agricultural, such healthful agricultural business. Here we can see the healthful agricultural development. We can see not only the farming area, but also the producers groups and the numbers of farmers increase slightly, but always upward to increased. Only except 2007. This year is the government tried to use the traceability system instead of the GAP system. Okay, so I come to the conclusion and policy implication. For Taiwan, I think the success of Taiwan's land reform happens under extraordinary circumstance. And the land reform is not a solution for socio-economic problems of agricultural and rural development. Several negative consequences are often overlooked. And besides, the land reform I will suggest that should be a dynamically rearranged process to rearrange rules, institutions, and rights that access to land or control over land or how to use land resources. But Taiwan land reform experience, I think, is by nation the case for those countries with small-scale farming systems. Especially, we have three stages land reform that reflects how the agricultural development and how the farmland should be used. And finally, the objective and strategies of land reform should depend on societal needs and expectations, such as first, maybe is the social equality, maybe the economic growth, or maybe finally and most importantly is the environmental sustainability. Thank you for your listening.
And we thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Wong. That was paper 2, Land Policy Development and Agriculture Transition. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our moderator, our chair of panel 1. He is our former Deputy Minister from the Council of Agriculture, Professor Lin Guoqing. Professor Lin, you have the floor. Our applause.
Yeah, thank you very much. And distinguished guests and our alumni, and good morning to everyone. And I feel honored today to have a chance to be a chairman for this session. And all 4 of you are my good friends for a long period of time. And we just listened to 2 speakers give a speech on the agricultural land conversion and also the policy development and the agricultural development in Taiwan. I think they pinpoint the major problem until now we face. Of course, we have achieved some great performance in the past. But before I'm going into this kind of discussion, may I have just 1 or 2 minutes to give some of my thought to what they just said. And I think the one thing we have to look at Taiwan's experience is Taiwan's population. The density is the 2nd highest in the world. So, and also the per capita income now is around 23,000 or 24,000 US dollars. So which means the pressure on land actually is very high. But if you look at the plant area, we call the cultivated land population density, also the 2nd highest in the world. The highest actually is Japan. Taiwan is the 2nd highest. Another thing I have to share with you is agricultural land prices I think Taiwan now is the highest in the world. So per capita, per hectare, agricultural land prices now I think is $500,000 US. So for our farmers, if we sell 1 hectare, and they will be able to buy at least 200 hectares in New Zealand. So this is the thing we face now. And the third I would like to share with you is our land, agricultural land tax system. Because, to be related to our theme today is about the tax system. So agricultural land tax in Taiwan is a zero tax, which means if you use agricultural land for agricultural purpose, you don't pay property tax, don't pay any real estate tax, and also no capital gain tax. I think this is the reason, one of the reasons why the agricultural land price is so high. So lastly, I will emphasize the part that, for the agriculture farming efficiency, in the last 30 years, of course, Taiwanese government tried to increase the farm size, and we know that some of the land-based agriculture, the scale must be increased. However, due to a lot of reasons, the average farm size in the last 50 years is almost the same. In 1950s, it's 1 hectare. Until today, again, it's still only 1 hectare. So this is the background. So lastly, I'll say I'm also alumni to this center because I've been teaching in this center for more than 20 years. And the land's still there, but I'm aging fast. So some of our alumni here probably, you don't recognize me anymore. But I believe some of you has been in the class, for last 20 years. So before further ado, I think I will go to, our discussion session proper. And we have 2 discussants. And these 2 are my good friends for many years. And actually 2 days ago, we enjoyed 6 hours together, right? From afternoons 6 o'clock until midnight. We are together, enjoy hot spring. And for the more than 10 years, we always talk about agricultural land policy. Actually, in the center, they asked me to give the lecture. Always is agricultural land policy in Taiwan. So I would like to, first one, probably Professor Jim Riddell, you will go first. Okay? So let's welcome Jim Riddell.
Is this working? Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much, Lin Guo-chin. It's always a great pleasure to be able to discuss agricultural change, etc. I think the 2 papers today are very important indication, but also I would suggest we take it in context from a similar forum we held about 10 years ago, and that is Dr. Lin Guo-chin's chapter in the book that we produced with Lincoln Institute. And we get an idea of the dynamics of the changing land policy in Taiwan. And then I'd like to think of this in terms of what we know of what's happening in the rest of the world. So, but we need to take, I think, Dr. Lin Guo-chin's paper into context also. Okay, the papers, our 2 papers today, really highlight the fact that there is no solution. We see repeated attempts to come up with a new policy. There's no final answer because the situation is too dynamic. As soon as we make a policy choice, we find that creates impediments into the future. And so that creates a problem. And then we need a new policy to somehow overcome the unanticipated consequences of the previous policy. And so we are continually searching. And as Dr. Wang and his colleagues' paper, we have had 38 major agricultural, rural economy, and rural land policy development acts, etc., promulgated during the time that we're celebrating the 50 years of the Institute. And as the paper documents, the rate of policy development, in fact, is accelerating. During the Great Land Reform period, we only needed 5 major policy and legal promulgations. Since the turn of the century, we've needed 18. That means we're producing more than one a year. This reflects the dynamic changes that have taken place. As Professor Liu points out in her paper, this is due to the fact that we've had a major change. The rural area is no longer the engine of growth. The development of Taiwan came out of the dynamic growth that took place in the agricultural sector following the land reform. This has now shifted to the post-industrial urban sector. And this is true not just in Taiwan, it's true in every country represented here, as well as my own. And we need, it seems we need to find a new paradigm. How do we get out of the intellectual rut where we're always working on a new agrarian policy or a new rural development policy? And I think the problem is that we have separated our energies. We have specialists in urban land, and then we have specialists in rural land, as though they're separated. We have urban tax policy and rural tax policy. I think it's time we need to think of a new intellectual model in which we recognize that the two sectors cannot exist independent of each other. The way we're doing it now creates a constant win-lose situation in which the rural sector always loses, and because we have so many pressing problems where the majority of our population now lives in cities. I think that it's time that we seriously consider would we develop a model in which the ecological services of our rural areas are properly priced. Cities cannot produce the clean air they need to breathe. Cities cannot produce the clean water they need to drink and bathe. Cities cannot produce the clean food they need for a healthy life, nor can they produce the raw resources we need for our industries. These come from the rural sector. Isn't it time that we think how we institutionally would bring urban and rural population together into the debate of what is going to be our common future and how are we going to price it, how we're going to pay the fair cost that clean air, clean water, clean food really cost us to produce. So a paradigm shift. And I think we could see some ways we can go about this by looking more or less globally. How do we produce the proper investments and the attractiveness of the human resources we need to make rural communities more vital? Not just farming. And that comes back to Professor Lin's chapter 10 years ago. And that is, we know now that agricultural families and agricultural enterprises cannot exist without off-farm income streams. The day of the full-time farmer have been gone for a generation or so. And yet our policies are always in terms of how do we increase agricultural viability, rather than saying how do we bring more income streams into the rural sector. So if we take a look at a couple countries that have also addressed this, I think we can get some indications of where our investments maybe need to be made and where we can start in discussing a new paradigm. And this would be, say, countries like Finland and New Zealand. One of the problems is that when we ask our bright people, our bright university graduates, why wouldn't you start your business in a rural community rather than starting it in Taipei again, or in Helsinki again, or in Wellington? Well, I don't want my children to be stuck in poor education. How will they ever succeed if they go to a country school? Finland, which has one of the best education, the enviable education systems of the world, pays teachers considerably more if they will transfer to a rural community. So we make the price incentive. If we want good education in rural communities, we have to pay for it. We get our best teachers and we pay them more. This makes it attractive for us to move there so our children can breathe fresh air, have fresh water and fresh food, and also good education. Communication is another big problem. None of us want to be isolated. How do we remove the feeling of isolation by, say, somebody trying to have me move my software company or my architectural firm to a rural community where I can get access to land? And, but I'm not going to go there if I don't have good communications. New Zealand and Finland made an early decision to see that all the rural communities have access to the same kinds of communication facilities that exist in Helsinki or in Wellington. So I don't suffer by leaving the urban centers. And the last one is the infrastructure investment in making it possible for small to medium-sized enterprises of a high-tech nature to have access to the energy, roads, etc. necessary to think about moving to a place where they can have, what do you call it, combined with other similar types of small to medium enterprises to make an area attractive to, again, our best and brightest. So this also fits with the other problem we share in all of our countries, and that is our university graduates, professionals, are being priced out of the housing market, being priced out of the amenities they seek and the kind of life they want to live because there's just not available for them in the cities unless at the prices or at the wages we're willing to give. So how would we make this appealing for these people to look to moving their ideas and their innovations into a more rural area? And that is then thinking of how we would have ecological services also as a business model. Not just as a desirable thing to feel good, but with adequate pricing, how do we make this into a business? So I think if we can find the innovations needed to create a viable eco-services business model that attracts our best and brightest minds, such a land reform will be certainly an even more exciting event when we hold this celebration 50 years from now. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jim. A wonderful suggestion. And the next discussion is also my good friend, Dr. Rainer Adam. And he got his PhD from Bonn University. And currently he's a regional director of Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom in East Europe, in Bulgaria, right? And so please give also welcome him with a warm applause.
Yeah, thank you very much. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Center for inviting me to be involved in this symposium and to be a discussant in this first session where we commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Center. I'm deeply honored and I'm very proud that I've been associated with the Center for many, many years. Since 2003, I come every year to teach a class on governance issues, good governance in land administration to the agriculture class. But my association with Taiwan is longer than those 16 years. because I had the great fortune to be involved in a joint German-Taiwanese research program from the early 1980s, actually pretty close to the second stage land reform when it started. And I was here in 1983-84 to do my field research. And in fact, the center kindly hosted me for 3 months, put me up without charge, without cost to me, as a poor PhD student to work and to prepare my field research. And my very good friend, Professor Yen Aichin, was a partner in crime at that time when we got to know each other and set out to learn more about land and land policies here in Taiwan. I had a great pleasure reading the 2 drafts of the papers because my professional work took me, of course, away from Taiwan, and I could not follow the further developments after basically the beginning of the second stage land reform in 1982. But I've been pretty much part of it in a way, because in 1986 and 87, the research results of our joint research were presented to CEO, the Council of Agriculture, and to Taiwanese decision makers. And we advocated a policy to move away from the old paradigm of owner-operator farming and to encourage land to be more mobile, so that land could move to the best tiller, basically, regardless of property rights, and encouraged long-term lease programs, as we had them in Germany, for instance, nine years lease programs. And when I read the paper, then I could realize that, oh, it took a little while, from 86 to about 2000, when the amendment of the Agriculture Development Act was promulgated, and then it took a little while longer, 2009, until finally, let's say, a policy which was already advocated in the mid-80s would find a fertile ground. We've seen the figures regarding this policy and the successes in increasing farm operation from 1 to 8 hectares or 9 hectares. But if you look at the overall figure, of course, in comparison to the total, is still modest, one could say. Yeah, so this is the first point I would like to make, and I would follow it up with the fact that this shows how sticky, let's say, or how dominant certain norms and concepts are in the mind of decision makers, maybe more so than in the mind of farmers. Because when we went out to the field in the 80s, farmers were all very shy to say that actually they were not operating the land they were owning, because they were all afraid that it would be taken away from them, because they basically violated the norm. The dominant norm was the tiller operator. And so one found a lot of new terms to camouflage, let's say, this new reality. One of them was Weituo Jinyin, Weituo Daigeng, you know, so entrusted farming, different types of management. But I mean, it was nothing than land lease, and one could identify it clearly as such. So I'm very grateful that I had a chance to read those 2 papers and could follow what has happened in the 90s and 2000. As a German, of course, I was also very pleased to read just in the second line of the paper of Professor Leo, when you refer to one of my countrymen, you know, John Heinrich von Thünen, and the Thünen rings I was treated with as a student. So I was very happy to see this and his works on the isolated state, and when Thünen developed the basic concept and the theory of marginal productivity. My second point is that both papers show the complexity of land policy development in a rapidly industrializing modern island society. The papers document, as I said, the stickiness of ideals, norms, and approaches to land by the government of Taiwan. And that's not surprising, because we human beings, we don't want to deviate from a path who has shown in the past to be highly successful. And the first land reform was deemed to be highly successful, and you showed it, Professor Wang, very nicely with the smileys. The first land reform phase was the smiley, was the face up. The second one was face down, and the third one was face up again, and smiling all together. So it's difficult to shift from a successful approach to something unknown. The amendment of the Agriculture Development Act in 2000 finally broke with this old dominant norm of the first land reform. When we suggested this in the 80s, was just too early. And we knew it because we saw our Taiwanese colleagues walking out of the room that they were not pleased with our results at the time. Particularly the adoption of the farmland for agricultural usage norm and the retirement of the old farmland owned by farmers principle, which was the base for the second land reform, then has been accomplished basically through concrete programs in 2009. Thereby, the idealized owner-occupier operator idea was replaced by a more dynamic principle which allowed land to move to the best farmer entrepreneur, to move resources to the most efficient operator. But we have also heard, and Jim has commented on this is not sufficient, as we can learn again, and when we are overtaken by developments. It took another 9 years, as I said, to come to concrete programs, the small landlord, big tenant program, and I mentioned that I hope that this is continuing. In 1986, let's say, our ideas were just not taking into consideration, let's say, the historical experience properly of the Taiwanese and the Taiwanese government. However, let's say, there's another point I would like to make is that the Taiwanese people and the Taiwanese farmers, of course, they need to make a living, and they had, despite, let's say, this successful land policy, to find a way how to earn income and to subside, to subsist on the resources they had. And so they were very, let's say, creative in finding ways how to circumvent the norms and move the boundary little by little, and in the end, the facts prove them right. But it shows how unresponsive certain policies can be towards the needs of the ones who actually would be the beneficiary of those norms and the ones who need, let's say, this change. Jim mentioned the dynamics and the plentifulness of policies. He put the figures down, and maybe here less would be more. Maybe we should formulate less norms, less rules, then there would be less norms to police, less norms to enforce. And this is my last point. I believe that the capacity of any government is limited, and to enforce rules which they are unwilling or unable to enforce leads to other distortions or issues of justice or fairness and equality. Because to the ones who don't enforce the rules, like, let's say, those illegal factories operating, that's maybe a benefit, or it may be also a benefit for the community. However, for the ones who play by the rules and follow them, it is, of course, grossly unjust. And it erodes, let's say, maybe the very fabric of a society if we have rules which are observed by some and not by others, and they are not observed by, and there's impunity for them. So the price may be heavy for the non-implementation of rules which show or represent then also different interests. And we can see that the interests of a central government and a local government have not been properly dealt with, because 130,000 factories illegal on land where they should not be, that is quite something, despite, let's say, of course, the factors which we understand why this is so. So here there are two options. you go on an enforcement option just because the rules are there, but this is also not satisfying because you have to consider that it brings benefits to the localities. Maybe decision-making processes should change so that more power of decision-making as to land conversion is vested with a lower level of government. But this, of course, requires trust, and one has also to see, of course, the condition of Taiwan, where there is the central government, the provincial government, and, let's say, local governments all crammed on one small island. A last point, which may also be reflected in this non-observance of rules, is that maybe the approaches in the formulation of the policy were not participatory enough. And I'm not talking about all, let's say, people, let's say, in the rural areas. However, crucial target groups and stakeholders may have not been consulted properly in the process. This would be something which could be easily rectified in the future to be more inclusive, more balanced, and come to policies which in the end benefit, let's say, the intended beneficiaries actually, and so that they can themselves decide on how they would like to lead their lives, to become an evening farmer, a weekend farmer, or whatever type of farmer, but not the farmer we have idealized in our notion of the full-time man who is toiling on the field from morning to night, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So here I have, of course, great hopes because the times are not standing still. However, the target, let's say, of 780,000 hectares of paddy land, which should be preserved, I assume will not be kept. Professor Lin, you mentioned the extreme pressure on land, and you put the figures out there. Every landowner here of agriculture land is maybe not a farmer. He is maybe the owner of agriculture land and a potential millionaire. And if he has this in mind as his future vision, nothing can deter him from anything else. So here, most likely, new ways have to be found to convert land to non-agricultural use, which would maybe ease the pressure and give a future for the urban young who have great difficulties in having access to housing. Maybe the decline, let's say, of population overall will bring some relief, but that will be in the distant future. So I believe that here some serious thought would be warranted. I thank you very much for your attention. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Adam. I think two discussants made a very good observations and analysis of the problem we face in Taiwan. Of course, I think any land reform in any country are very difficult. So, like just Adam just mentioned, actually the discuss for reform actually is started 30 or 40 years ago, including the land to the tiller. You know, this actually started, you know, analyze and out of suggestions that this policy should be revised. However, it's only until year 2000 this policy has been revised. But create other problems, because now after 2000, Professor Lin, I can buy agricultural land. Before year 2000, I cannot buy agricultural land in Taiwan. So what happened is, before year 2000, actually is farmers, they can build a farmhouse. Not said after year 2000. Before year 2000, they can build. But however, in those times before year 2000, there's no limitation of the lot size. Okay, they can build, you know, on their agricultural land. But after year 2000, it's more restrict. The lot size has to be higher than 0.25 hectares. But however, the problem is now everybody can buy agricultural land. So in year 2000, the Act said only farmers can build farmhouses on their farmland. Not everybody. Everybody can buy, but not everybody can build. But what happened is after year 2000 until today, this law has not been enforced properly. And then this becomes very loosely to explain who are the farmers. So if you interpret the way who bought agricultural land, then they immediately become farmers. It means everybody who buy agricultural land, they can build their farmhouse on the agricultural land. So this become a serious problem after year 2000. So second part, I think you suggest that whether you should put more rules or regulations, or should you relax. I agree that if you just impose more rule and regulation, but you have no governance efficiency, then create more problem for unfairness, which means somebody can break the law, but they don't have to pay the penalty, just like what happened to so many illegal use agricultural land for factories. Yes. And we say if you borrow $1, you don't return to the bank, that's your problem. You borrow 1 million, your problem. But if you borrow 1 billion, if you cannot return to the bank, it's become whose problem? It's the bank's problem. So what happened is, what we see today is so many farmhouses on agricultural land and so many illegal use of agricultural land for factory. Then this becomes government and our problems. Of course, we have to find some way to tackle this problem. So one is through planning, convert more agricultural land to non-agricultural uses. However, I think this part have to be, a good arrangement for fairness. So anyway, so I'm come to the next stage. I will let two of you, if you have the response. If you don't, I think you will say a few words. Then I will just go to the floor. Anyone, you can just air your opinion, or you can ask questions to them. Yes? Anyone? Two of you? Okay, to audience. Anyone? You raise your hand. Yes, please.
Is that on? No. Sounds okay. You sure? Okay. Well, so I'm really curious about the price of agricultural land, because if Taiwan has the most expensive agricultural land in the world, is it merely an artifact of the weak enforcement of your own zoning laws, or is there something else going on? Because I don't think it really has to do with whether agricultural land is taxed or not. And so my question is, has anybody looked to see how many people who own farmhouses actually do farming? Because in the United States, we have this problem where people call themselves farmers, they buy agricultural land, they buy one goat, and they build a big mansion. They call themselves farmers, and they pay the agricultural tax on their land. But in many cases, for some reason, the value isn't capitalized into the land remains relatively cheap. So, but somehow in Taiwan, the land value has now gone up, and I think, has it simply gone up because of weak enforcement? And if you actually did more enforcement, would the land prices on agricultural land fall?
I think what I would like to do is to get more questions they will ask them to respond together. So it's fine, just not one to one, but I will, let other people. Anyone want to? Just raise your hand. If not, then I will just ask them to respond. Four of you, anyone can respond to his question. If no one, then I respond. Okay, you have a microphone over there.
I think in Taiwan right now, we have about 28,000 the farmhouse in Taiwan right now. And as I mentioned on the presentation, only about 36% belong owned by the farmers. So you can see that one. Because we have the farmhouse, but for the Before the year 2000, they can get the agricultural land. They did not have this limitation for the 0.25 hectare. So we call this is the old farmer. The old farmer, they can build a farmhouse and sell to the others. Then they can use the agricultural land to build another housing, farmhouse, and then resell again. So that's the reason why I said 66% of farmhouse, the lot size is less than the 0.25 hectare. Okay. Even in the year 2000, our regulation said that the minimum lot size should be the 0.25 hectare. But if you have owned the agricultural land before the year 2000, you do not have this kind of limitation. So that's the reason why we have this kind of problem. Yeah.
But if they enforce the actual zoning, would that happen?
Okay. The zoning, because we allowed that they can build the farmhouse. Okay. So, but after year 2000, we have this kind of regulation. Okay.
Okay, I just add some information to it. Actually, firstly, is a zero taxation, okay, for agricultural land. So secondly is when you build a farmhouse, build a house actually not, although it's called farmhouse, actually it's a house. And build a house on agricultural land, and that is still considered agricultural land. It's not the real estate. They don't pay real estate property tax at all. And we think, of course, it's a serious problem, and we recommend for policy changes. And also, it's been discussion that once the houses have been built, when you sell agricultural land, then only farmers can buy this piece of agricultural land because it's already have a farmhouse there. But if you are not the farmer, of course you cannot buy. But however, this is not being enforced. But anyway, I think that sooner or later, this has to be changed. Otherwise, I think the whole agriculture, non-urban area is getting to be more problem, including the agricultural land prices are very high. So, and you talk about the land control. Yes, we have a zoning system for non-urban area. So that's why she called it a prime agriculture area and also the general agriculture area. And so we have a zoning system. But the zoning system is, allowed to build house on there. I think it's different from your way of, thinking and, and ideas. I think they have already shown me. We have only 3 minutes left, so I just, give this to two of you. You have anything? Otherwise, I just give the floor to. Yeah. Okay.